1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4. Now look at Part 1.
You will hear two students talking about university clubs and societies. First, in the exam, you will have 20 seconds to look at questions 1 to 7. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 7.
Hello, are you the person to ask about joining a club?
Yes, I am. What would you like to know?
Well, I'm interested in several things, but I'd like to know more about the different clubs and how much they cost. I'm looking for a small club that's not too expensive.
OK. Have a look at this table. You can see the names of the clubs, the fees, and the number of members. I'm afraid they aren't in any order. If you look at the top of the list, the first club is table tennis. That's one of our new clubs.
Oh, right. So the table tennis club costs £20. That's quite expensive.
Yes, it is a bit expensive. The cross-country cycling club is cheaper, though. Membership fees are only £15, but on the other hand, it's got 100 members.
The film and drama club costs a lot, doesn't it?
Yes, £50 is a lot, and that's probably why it only has 12 members. Is there any other club you think looks interesting? Look at the next one, street dance. Have you ever done any street dance?
No, I haven't really.
It's the cheapest. It only costs £5. OK. Shall we start with your interests? What do you like doing best?
Well, I like photography. I've got a professional camera, so I take it quite seriously. But I can't really imagine belonging to a club to take photographs. I usually go on long walks on my own and take photos. So I like photography, but I wouldn't want to join a club to do it.
OK. So what else do you like doing? Running?
Oh no, not running. I like walking, but I hate running. I'm afraid the running club isn't for me, or the cycling club.
And film and drama?
No, it's far too expensive. But I do like yoga. I've practiced yoga on and off for years. How many members does the yoga club have?
It's always a small group. A lot of people sign up at the beginning of term, but they stop going after a few weeks. So they're left with a few regular members every year.
That sounds good. I think I'd like to join the yoga club. And what about the contemporary dance club? Is it expensive?
Contemporary dance? No. It's not expensive. £10 for the term. Do you like dance?
Well, I've never tried contemporary dance, but I do like jazz and tap dance. How often does the group meet?
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, in the exam, you will have 20 seconds to look at questions 8 to 10. Listen and answer questions 8 to 10. So, can I have your full name, please?
Victoria Mandeville.
Mandavil?
No. Mandeville.
L-E. Thank you. And how old are you?
19.
And your address?
57, Berry Gardens, Atherton Park, Manchester, M46.
How do you spell Berry? B-E-R-R-Y?
No, it's B-U-R-Y.
Right. B-U-R-Y. And do you have a contact number?
Yes, my mobile is 07942 573 279.
07942 573 279.
Yes, that's right. Is that all?
One more thing. Do you have an email address?
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2. Listen to the conversation between two students, John and Carol. They have a list of the names of authors whose books have been given to the library. They have to classify the authors as writers of cookery, sports or travel books.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
This is a great collection of books, isn't it?
Very impressive. Who gave them to us?
Apparently the donor was a book reviewer. There are a lot of books about sport. Here's one, My Life in Cricket.
Well, that's certainly sports. Who's the author?
Peter Adams.
He also wrote Journeys Through Spain.
Did he?
Peter Adams writes books on both sports and travel, so S.T. is written against his name. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen because you will not hear the recording a second time. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 8.
This is a great collection of books, isn't it?
Very impressive. Who gave them to us?
Apparently the donor was a book reviewer. There are a lot of books about sport. Here's one, My Life in Cricket.
Well, that's certainly sports. Who's the author?
Peter Adams.
He also wrote Journeys Through Spain.
Did he?
Next one is Stephen Bow.
He wrote Summer Barbecues, Cooking for Singles, Dinners by Candlelight.
Anything else?
No. Do you have anything by Pam Campbell?
Wanderings in Greece, My Life in Russia, Travels in the Amazon, and Pam Campbell's Guide to a Successful Trip.
Sounds like she got around. My next one is C. Ketzik.
He has a list of books about football, the World Cup, Heroes of the World Cup, Playing with the Round Ball, Soccer for Everyone.
That's enough. He was a one-topic writer. Ari Hussein, however, wrote about cooking and travel. His series of cookbooks is called Living and Cooking in Spain, Living and Cooking in China, Living and Cooking in Brazil. He's been everywhere.
I've got a specialist here, Sally Innes on tennis. Here are some of her titles. Improve Your Serve, Tennis for Everyone, Tennis Forever.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Sally Innes on tennis. Here are some of her titles. Improve Your Serve, Tennis for Everyone, Tennis Forever.
Meg Jorgensen has 3 books, one in each category. Cooking for Health, Sport is Good for You, and Travelling in Australia.
A varied talent. Who's next?
Bruno Murray. He wrote children's books. A whole series called A Child's Guide to, and then The Name of the City.
Oh, you mean like A Child's Guide to London?
Yes, that's right. He seems to have stayed in Europe. Ruby Lee, however, has just one book. It's called The Emerald Isle, and it's all about Ireland. Apparently she went around Ireland on foot.
Jim Wells wouldn't like that. His books are all about motor racing. Nice photos of old racing cars. Don't you love the goggles on the driver?
They do look strange, don't they? I think we're nearly finished. What did Helen Young write?
Summer menus. Food for thought. She also did a book of Chinese recipes. Cantonese, I think.
OK, that's dealt with the first box. Let's stop for a minute.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You are going to hear a conversation between a student and a tutor. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen to the tape and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi, Brad. I was wondering if you have time to answer some of my questions about my upcoming test.
Sure, no problem, Jeff. What is it that you're having problems on?
Well, it's for my English final. We have to prepare a 5-minute speech to present in front of the whole class, including the professor. So I'm a little bit worried.
Is there any specific topic, or can you do it on whatever you want?
It has to have something to do with the origins of English literature. I'm thinking of doing it on Shakespeare, but I bet many other students will have the same idea.
That's fine. Don't worry if others are doing the same thing. As long as you do a good job, that's all that counts. A good professor will grade all students fairly.
You really think so?
I suppose Shakespeare is the most famous author, so it should be fine. Besides, Shakespeare has so many works. You only have to choose a couple of them and talk about those.
I guess you're right. Do you have any advice about how to prepare a speech?
First, you need to select your topic. Have you done this yet?
Yes, I have lots of information on Shakespeare.
Good. Next, you should do a research on a specific topic. Do you have a deadline for which to turn in your speech topic?
The deadline is next Tuesday.
So you should have a detailed outline of what you will say by then. Do not just turn in a piece of paper saying Shakespeare on it. That will not give your professor any idea as to what you will be talking about.
OK. So you think I should write out an outline of my speech?
Of course! Writing your speech out in outline form is essential. No one could give a speech from scratch. Even the president must refer to his outline when giving a speech. An outline will give you a good structure to base your speech on.
Now look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen to the tape and answer questions 26 to 30.
That's true. I was thinking that I would do an outline last, after I figured everything out. But I think your idea is better. What should I do after I have an outline prepared?
You should then write the speech out, word for word, what you're going to say. This is so you'll have a firm idea of what you will say. It doesn't mean that the speech you will give will be exactly the same, but at least you have a fairly good idea what the final product will be. At this point, I can read it over for you if you want.
Really? That would be great. I would appreciate that so much.
No problem. Once you write it out, the next step is to practice giving the speech. At first, you can do it in front of the mirror, so you can see your expressions in your presentation. After that, you should practice giving your speech to some friends. I can listen to it for you too.
That's a great idea. I really owe you a big favour then.
Sure, you can do my Latin homework for me. Just kidding. Seriously, don't worry about it. I can help you with anything you need. So when is the speech due?
Well, the speech topic is due next Tuesday. The speech itself will be due next Friday.
I can help you any time you want because I have no tests this next week. Besides, I'm an English major and Shakespeare's one of my favourite authors, so helping you out will be no big deal.
Thanks so much. Well, I'm going to the library to get started on all this. I'll call you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow then.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4. You will hear a talk about developments in public transport in large cities. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen to the first part of the talk and answer questions 31 to 34.
That big cities around the world are getting bigger is a clear trend. This situation is going to make the issue of transport increasingly important. Cities cannot work if their people and their visitors cannot move around. This means that public transport is vital to the success of cities. And yet, private car ownership is increasing all the time. Can these two facts be contained in the same reality? Isn't the car slowly but surely strangling the city? But we must acknowledge it does have genuine benefits. Having said that, the fact that car owners can escape to the mountains is of little relevance to the issue of daily city life, in which we need to do things like ferry heavy shopping and luggage around, something the car, of course, is invaluable for. But the so-called family car is rarely occupied by a family, just a single driver taking up a lot of road space. It's not only the car that clogs up our roads, of course. Trucks are heavy, noisy and smelly intruders. But it's hard to persuade companies to opt for rail freight rather than road. They argue that it is cheaper and more flexible, and trucks are undoubtedly able to go when you want, where you want. The cost claim is false, however. Truck companies don't hold themselves responsible for the environmental costs they incur, nor are they keen to calculate the time spent on repairs or delays. So, This is our first challenge, the sheer volume of traffic. If we compare 3 developed and urbanised countries, we can see interesting differences. The UK, for example, has just over 20 million cars, 1 for every 3 people approximately, and nearly 3 million buses and trucks. These figures sound very high, but in fact the Netherlands, although only a little over a quarter the population, has more vehicles per head of population. Meanwhile, Germany, bigger than both other countries put together, actually outstrips either in terms of vehicles per head of population. Now, there is no correlation between these figures and the percentages of journeys made on public transport. This means that the route to better public transport use is not abolishing the car, but rather making public transport better. Not surprisingly, where people can choose, they choose the thing they prefer, not the thing they don't. How do people judge public transport? Well, a major survey was carried out this year, indicating that there are many aspects, from clean interiors of buses to the proximity of routes to homes and workplaces. Fare prices is a complex issue and needs to be accounted with car costs. What people seem to find most frustrating is scheduling. If the route doesn't pass their departure point when it suits them, they'll drive instead. The issue of personal safety seems to have reduced in urgency with better lighting at stops and CCTV. Now, various measures are being taken in a number of major cities, all designed to increase the appeal of public transport and thus to persuade car users to leave their cars behind and free up the city's roads. Among these is bringing in smart cards. These are purchased in advance and mean passengers spend less time waiting to buy tickets and board buses and trains, particularly when switching across transport modes within the same journey. Another initiative is the use of computers in managing scheduling with greater efficiency. But such logistical measures are not sufficient in themselves, and indeed the benefits that they bring are often less apparent to passengers than to transport managers. From the passenger's point of view, the fact that buses are becoming more comfortable is significant, because it brings them more in line with the car. Delays and diversions are, of course, deeply irritating for passengers. Even if these can't be eliminated, ensuring that passengers have more detailed information available to them will help to reduce their sense of stress. We often associate public transport with inner-city travel, but of direct benefit to passengers are systems such as taxi sharing and dial-a-bus, which provide more flexible options for suburban journeys. And finally, nothing really significant can happen without a shift in people's mindsets. The way we travel is an expression of our values about many things. Companies operating public transport are slowly but surely finding it possible to sell their services as a public-spirited alternative to the car, as awareness of environmental issues has increased radically in the last few years. Overall, then, this combination of steps and changes has a good chance of shifting the city out of the car and onto the bus and train.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.